I've driven across the country back and forth 7 times now, going over 2,000 miles each way. From caravanning when we moved across the country with our 2 dogs and 2 manual sports cars, to traveling and overlanding out of our Jeep Wrangler, and even now, towing a small travel trailer with a motorcycle. Each trip taught me something about driving long distances, dealing with dogs, traveling with people, weather, gear, and what actually matters on the road. Today I want to walk you through what I learned and what I think is the perfect combo for long distance travel for someone who is going to be doing this on a more consistent basis. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down everything that we learned from going across country 7 times back and forth, from the gear that we used, the vehicles that we took, what it's like traveling with dogs, and how those trips shaped our setup today. So whether you're planning your first big trip or just want to know what works in the real world, this video is for you. I'm going to be having different chapters down as well for the different trips, so you can scroll through this video if you want to see the different trips and everything like that. And then at the end, I want to show you guys the setup that we have going on today. But guys, if you're new to the channel, what is up? My name is Jeffrey, and if you love all things that have to do with overlanding, off-roading, travel trailering, adventure motorcycling, and just adventure lifestyle, check out the channel. We're going to be doing more long distance trips with the truck and trailer. We're going to be doing more long distance trips with the motorcycles. We're going to be doing a whole bunch of more off-roading and stuff like that. So check out the channel. We do a bunch of fun things here. But with that out of the way, let's get right into this video. So jumping right into the first time we ever did this, that was in 2020. In the heat of COVID, that was our very first trip all the way across country. We left our hometown, Buffalo, New York, drove all the way to Southern California in the height of COVID. That trip was a very memorable one, and we learned a lot. So on that trip, that was very emotional because it was our first time leaving home, leaving everything pretty much behind us. So yeah, that was a very tricky trip because we had to pack all of our belongings inside of a Penske truck and drive that across country. With that being said, we couldn't do that trip ourselves because, well, at the time, I've never went out this far west. I didn't really know how to do a road trip at all. So what did I do? We relied on a very close family friend who has done a lot of road trips in the past, and he has driven out here before at that time. So not only on that trip did we have to worry about me, my wife, our friend, and all of our belongings, my sister, her husband, and our other good friend came along with us as well, because we needed people once we actually got out here to help us actually move all of our stuff into our first apartment. So mind you, so this is 6 people, 2 dogs, all of our belongings mixed between 3 vehicles. The vehicle that I was driving was my wife's vehicle, which was a Veloster N. My wife was driving my vehicle at the time, my first Ford Focus RS, and then our family friend was driving the Penske truck. Now, the problem with this was basically the Focus RS and the Veloster N. They were manual hatchbacks, so that led to a very interesting problem. Really only me and my wife could drive stick, and my sister could kind of drive stick in a pinch, so it led us to being basically we didn't really have any other people that could drive. But if you want to know exactly how well the Veloster N did, I do have a video on the channel talking just about that trip with the Veloster N, and then I also do have those first videos when we first moved out to SoCal. Those are on the channel as well. I'll have them linked down below. I'll have pretty much as much videos as I can linked down below. So for most of these trips, I have a video associated with it. So it will be linked down below if you want to see the actual trip itself. So I would say probably by far that was the hardest trip because of, yeah, we never did it before. Didn't really know what to expect. Having to caravan, and then also basically having to drive the entire time. And then also we ran into a lot of bad weather going through Oklahoma and in Texas, where there were power outages, gas stations weren't working, and we just had a ton of different obstacles going on that trip. And so another element to that trip was all the people that were with us, we had a time limit to get there. We only had a couple days to get there because everyone, they did book a flight back home. People had to make it back to Buffalo to go to work and everything like that. And we had to get into our apartment because my wife was starting her other job out here. So we had a time limit to get out there. I forgot the exact time limit. I want to say it was a couple of days, but I think it was like 3 days, I want to say, that we scheduled for us to make it there because everyone, they were pretty much leaving that next day after we were supposedly going to make it there. So we had a time limit. But on that trip, we did stop at different hotels. but the negative thing about that is that we had very long days. They were between 12 to 16-hour days of just driving straight with pretty much no one else taking over because no one else could drive stick. And my family friend who was driving the Penske truck, he just drove the truck the entire time. So it was a really stressful time, I'm not gonna lie to you, which you'll see how that definitely changed the way that we do things now for the good and maybe for the bad, but you'll see in a second. But some of the other things that we learned on that trip is about the Love gas stations or the Love truck stops. Family friends who showed us those things, and we still use them to this day. They are great when you're on the road. You have Buc-ee's, you have Pilot, and there's a couple other ones that are like nice as well. But the main reason why we stop at the Loves is because they have plenty of dog rest areas. So bringing dogs with you, that does change things up a bit. The big takeaways that I took from that is looking ahead to make sure that hotels can accommodate dogs. So we have our 2 big huskies with us, which that did make things a little bit more challenging, but it wasn't as challenging as what I thought. Most places, if you just say you have a dog with us, they'll be like, okay, cool. They may charge you like an extra $25, but it's nothing too crazy, which also makes me believe like, wow, actually people can bring dogs with you. Like, I wonder how well they clean these rooms. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. The other thing that I realized on that trip is when it comes down to having people with you, it is nice because you can talk to people, but the negative thing is when you are the main person that's driving, it does get tired. It just makes you tired when you have to be on the entire time. So every single time that you are moving, you're the one responsible for it. I realized I didn't like that aspect of it, but I did love the aspect of seeing everything that you're going through the country, literally seeing everything with your own eyes, being able to roll the window down, smell the smell, see the sights. That was something which we did before when I was like a kid. We would go on trips, down south and stuff like that, but it wasn't this consistent of going like, yeah, for multiple days you're driving and going this far west. So honestly, this is one of the trips that really like sparked my interest in being like, oh, actually I like this. There were things that I liked, things I didn't like, but yeah, we learned a lot on that trip. Taking a smaller car was fine, but I knew in my mind, I was like, you know what, if we're gonna do this again, I don't know if I want to do it in this vehicle. So we fast forward some time to 2021. I want to say in July, that was our first trip going back to Buffalo from Southern California. At this point in time, I had a Jeep Wrangler Unlimited. I sold my first Focus RS and bought the Jeep Wrangler Unlimited because I wanted to do more overlanding, off-roading, and I knew that I wanted to do long travel trips. So this time it was a better setup. It was just me, my wife, and our 2 dogs. The way we had that Jeep set up on that first trip out there, what we wind up doing was we pretty much put most of our stuff in the back seat of the Jeep, like on the floor and everything like that. And then we had the dogs were in like the back of the Jeep, and we had like a little net up so that they couldn't jump over. That setup worked fine. Some of the things that we did learn from that setup was I wanted to be able to lay down fully. And one of the big things that we did on this first trip back when it was just me and my wife, we were just saying to ourselves like, hey, if we could handle driving 16 hours plus days on the first trip, if we just switch back and forth, we can get there in 2 days and don't really have to stop, and get a hotel or anything like that. We can just drive straight through and make it. And that set us up for being like, yeah, we can pretty much do that. We can drive, the other person can talk, and then, we can talk to each other while one person can sleep, and then we can just continuously drive, which that method, I don't know if I would suggest for everyone, especially if you have kids or anything like that. But if you're just like adults and everything like that, and you're fairly like okay with it, it's a pretty good option because you can get places a lot quicker, not having to stop and rest, for like 8+ hours and things like that, which we're going to be talking about that coming up. But yeah, there are some pros and there are some cons to that. So yeah, one of the big things that I learned from that was we could do that. The only negative thing to that was inside of the back seat, having all of the stuff back there, trying to like lay down and rest while the other person was driving to get like some deep sleep so you could take over driving overnight was a bit difficult. So we wind up moving some stuff, I think, to like the front seat and like having the person trying to laying down in the back. The Jeep was still like better than a car, but if you know Wranglers, they're still kind of narrow. They're not necessarily the widest thing in the world, but we were able to make it work. We just had like all of our belongings and everything like that because when we went back, I think that first time we stayed for a couple of weeks. So we had a couple weeks worth of stuff with us, like gear, and we bought some food and some snacks and everything like that, and dog food and the dog stuff and just a lot of stuff with us. So we did learn that we needed to like figure out a better placement for like stuff to make the actual vehicle comfortable. But it was much more comfortable than taking a car. But we did figure out the miles per gallon. It definitely sucked inside of the Jeep. That Jeep had the 2.0 liter 4-cylinder. It was a 2018. It wasn't terrible, but just lugging stuff around was a bit much. And then on the trip back to Southern California, that's where we really realized the limitations when it came down to storage. We actually had another family member came back with us on that trip, and that was insane. So it was 3 of us in there with our dogs, and he was coming out to stay with us for like a couple of months, just like trying to like come out here. So he basically brought like a lot of his like storage and his like luggage and things like that. That's when we did get a storage bag. I believe we actually bought that when we were back in Buffalo. We bought a storage bag and we put it on top of the Jeep because it had a roof rack on. That did help with some of the storage. We were able to put stuff on top of the Jeep. We literally built like a platform for the dogs in the back because we had like other stuff that we were bringing back with us. So there's a platform, the dogs were on top of that. We had the entire back seat filled, so it was just basically a spot for one person to just sit, and then the 2 front seats. So we were packed, and on that trip back, it was a lot. It was a very stressful trip. I actually did get Bell's palsy for the very first time on that trip back. I didn't even realize until we got back. They were saying it was most likely due to stress. So the main things that I learned on that trip was, I mean, the Jeep could do it, just being pushed with that many people and that much stuff. I mean, we were probably over the payload of the Jeep, if I'm being totally honest. And I mean, we still got it done. That trip was harder for us for sure. We did drive mostly straight through. I believe on that trip we like stopped at like rest stops. Like I think we stopped at one for like a couple hours just because I was so exhausted. It was just a tough trip. And I do remember though too, we did the no toll route back, and we were being routed through like, I want to say Kansas, in like these small 2-lane highways out in the middle of nowhere, and there was definitely some tornado watches that were going on. It was a lot, but still a fun trip though. We did make it back in one piece, but yeah, I learned some things from that. Now the next trip was in February 2023. We took a trip down to Orlando from Southern California. So on that trip, we basically took the I-40 straight across the country. I want to say like 39 hours or something like that trip as well, and still like over 2,000 miles, or yeah, I think it was like still over 2,000 miles. Because I mean, pretty much every single one of these trips going in one direction was like 2,200 miles and then coming back. So like for each of these trips, I'm saying like 5,000 miles, I want to say, give or take. But yeah, that was a fun one as well because we were going to Florida. So we drove across the country, basically over the I-40, and then went down south. We actually went to a wedding to the same family friend member who drove the Penske truck. We were also going to Disney World and Universal, and I have those videos actually out on our secondary channel. If you want to see that channel, is linked down below too. But on that trip, we did learn some things from taking the Jeep before. So we definitely had a lot of stuff up on top of the Jeep to free up some storage space in the back seat. So we tried to make the back as comfortable as possible. We did have the back windows were tinted, and I did get like a window screen for like the front and then also for the back, so we could roll the windows down, and it had like the little bug, I guess, blockers, because I figured we were going to stop at some point in time somewhere just to get a couple hours of sleep. And yeah, we did. We were able to do that and then just like wake up and keep going, because I knew that we were going to be probably on some remote, you know, highway or something like that. Thinking about my past experience with the last trip with the Jeep, I knew that the fuel consumption was going to be slightly higher. I believe we got like 11 or 12 miles per gallon inside of the Jeep. I did bring a extra gas canister that was actually attached to the Jeep. I thought it looked cool, and also it just like helped as well, just having like I think it was like a gallon or 2 extra fuel, which did come in handy. There was a time when we were going through Texas, and my gas light, we weren't like super low, but we were getting low. I remember I got off the highway to get gas, and this was probably at like 1 o'clock in the morning or 2, very late. Got off the highway to get gas, and the gas station was was closed or it wasn't working or something like that. And I was like, okay, cool. Let me just get off. I'll try to get back onto the highway. We'll go further up. I do want to say I do remember that, and I was like a little bit nervous only because of to get back on the highway. It like routed us through like a little small town, and I was just like, listen, I don't want to be driving through some little small town in Texas at like 1 o'clock in the morning trying to find gas. If you know anything about Texas, you know, I wanted to get back on a highway and get further down the road to get to another gas station. But just knowing that we had extra fuel just in case something happened, like we were to break down, it was like that peace of mind. So that definitely influenced the way that we do things going forward. I always bring extra gas. Like I now actually have like 2 things of gas that I take with us just in case. You never know, but just in case. So interesting, on this trip, we still went pretty much straight through, but I do remember we gave ourselves extra time to get there because we were staying in Florida, I want to say, for like almost 2 weeks. So we gave ourselves plenty of time. I want to say like 3 or 4 days to get there, and us driving straight through, we did get there. We got into Florida. So we actually did stop at a motel, I want to say in like Jacksonville or something like that, like a couple hours away, just the day before we made it to Orlando. And then we were able to get into our Airbnb, which that was a great time as well. But that's where I saw the limitations of having the travel bag on top of the Jeep, because when we got into Florida, it only rained that one day, the day that we got in there when we were just driving through. Torrential rain, downpouring. Like I was like, oh yeah, this is actually like pretty intense. With that, our stuff, even though the bag said it was like water resistant and kind of waterproof, stuff got wet. So our clothes and stuff like that got kind of wet. Luckily enough, when we made it to the Airbnb, we were able to wash everything. Then also that bag was starting to rip on the route out there. So technically we drove with that bag on one trip from Buffalo to California, and then driving from California to Florida on the way there started to rip. And then on the way back, it was pretty much in shreds. I was using like tape and like heavy duty stuff to kind of keep it together. I was like, okay, cool. This thing made it like 7,000 miles. So like a trip to Florida and back, and then went on one trip from Buffalo to California. So I can't really be too mad at it, but I thought it was going to last a little bit longer. But I realized that, yeah, we were running out of space with that. And that made me kind of think about just space in general, because at this point in time, I had the bug of being like, I like going long distances. I like being able to go far and being comfortable and being able to take stuff with us and with our dogs, because our dogs are our babies. They come with us everywhere, and they came with us to Florida, and yeah, every time we go back, they come with us. But guys, if you're getting some value out of this video, do me a big favor. Can you just hit the like button and subscribe? That would help me out a lot. I'm really trying to hit 50,000 subscribers. That would really be great. That is my goal, and see if I can reach that. So if you're getting some value, hit the like button and subscribe. All right, let's continue on. So now fast forward to June 2023 is the point in time where I sold the Jeep Wrangler and bought the Ram Rebel, the 2019 Ram Rebel, the truck. And that was our road trip vehicle for the past couple of trips. That was a fun vehicle. Actually, yeah, one of the first things I did with that thing was I got a smart cap on the back to add more storage to the rear, like the trunk of the truck, because we knew the next time we were going back to Buffalo, we were going to be staying for close to like a month or so. So we knew we were going to bring a ton of stuff with us. With that in mind, what we actually did on that first trip to Buffalo in the truck, we actually had the dogs in the truck bed, because I got the smart cap Evo that was on the truck, and it has little doggy windows. You can open them up so air can keep going in, it flows. It's set up for like dogs. We didn't have much stuff in the trunk. We had stuff like kind of strapped down, but the dogs were in the trunk of the truck, and we had like a ladder situation or steps they could get up in there. And then we had most of our stuff was in like the back seat of the truck. And what we did actually too, we actually had this like blow up mattress that actually kind of fit on top of everything. It was kind of high, but we figured it would work, and honestly that was a pretty cool setup. There's some pros and there's some cons to that. I mean, overall, getting out to Buffalo across the country, it was way more comfortable than taking the Jeep. I mean, it makes sense, the Jeep, the solid front axle, you know, versus the truck, it makes sense. But also just having the V8 was nice, having the passenger staying power, and it was a much more comfortable ride. For myself, one thing I do like to say, even with the Jeep, I always like having some type of phone mount system for myself. So normally whenever we go across country, we have one person's phone is set up to run the GPS, like on the infotainment system, and then like the other person's phone, like whoever's driving, like usually if you listen to a podcast or something like that, that's what I'll have running off of my phone. And that's what we pretty much did. And I like having the phone mount kind of like off to the side, so it's like right there, quick. You can like see what you're doing. You know, I don't condemn being on your phone while you're driving, but just having it there and then like having the maps up and everything like that, it was nice for navigation. But yeah, the real negative side to that was because on our way back home, we changed the setup. We actually put the dogs in the back seat. We realized we liked that better just because, well, for the dog safety and also for, you know, the climate control situations. Because I knew on the way going back, I remember it was like a heat wave going through the country, and I was like, we don't want them in the trunk if it's going to be that hot. So we put them in the back seat, especially with the truck. I mean, that thing had the mega cab, so like we just flipped the seats up. We put the doggy beds on the floor of the back, and they had plenty of room, so we can just reach back and pet them and everything like that. And we loaded up the truck bed with all of our stuff. That worked out great, and that is honestly kind of the way that we run things now. Most of the stuff goes inside the truck bed. You can strap things down, label, put things wherever you want it to be, and you have a full truck bed, especially with the smart cap on top. Everything is secure, so if you stop at like a rest stop at night, everything's secure. You would have to like really get through that to get in there, but then having the dogs with you, which is really nice, make things easier for stopping and being able to go to rest stops real quick. You can stop, open up the door, let the dogs out, walk them, get back in. Super simple, much easier than having them in the truck bed. You had to get the ladder out, then move that down, do all this other stuff. So that setup is like pretty much perfected the way that we did things in a way. But then even on that trip back to California, what we did, I remember when we were in Buffalo, I bought a rooftop tent because I wanted to still do the overlanding and everything like that. There's some pros and some cons to rooftop tents, but for the sake of this video, I would say the negative side of the thing was the one that we had was a big one. It was nice, really big, but it cut the fuel economy and it added extra height to the truck. My truck at that point in time, which I had like the lift kit on it, was like a 3.5 inch lift. And then also with the rooftop tent, it like made the truck like 8 foot something like in height. So yeah, I eventually did take that off when we did something else, which I'll get into that in a second, but man, that was intense though. But the key takeaways was just making things easier, making things more simpler, having the dogs with us. It made things a lot easier just in the back. We also put like, I believe what we did, we had one seat down. I put like a basket full of like anything that we needed to have access to immediately. So we had like my computer bags and some other stuff and some like onboard food and things like that we had in the back seat, and one of the seats that was folded down, and then the other 2 seats were like flipped up and the dogs were just there. It was nice. We could roll down the windows and everything like that. That made things really, really simple. And then in May of 2024, this trip started the new adventure for us. This is when we first got our hiker trailer. So in May 2024, they started our adventure with the hiker trailer. The hiker trailers are actually made in Indiana. My father-in-law went to go pick it up for us and drove it back to Buffalo. So we had to drive to Buffalo to get it and then drive it back to California. So we went out to Buffalo again for a month or so. It was at least like a couple weeks. So on that trip, you know, back out to Buffalo was pretty much the same setup as we had before, but this time on the way back, we had the tow for the very first time. We figured like, hey, the rooftop tent situation wasn't the best situation because how tall the truck was, getting up inside of it and everything like that, it just made things too convoluted. It just made things a little bit more difficult. So we realized having a trailer itself would kind of be a nice compromise, if that makes sense. But one interesting thing that did happen on the way, I want to say out to Buffalo, going through Albuquerque, New Mexico. I remember when we were in like the parking lot, it seemed like it was going to be a tornado out of nowhere. Like there was tornado watches, and then out of nowhere it was just like super crazy hail and like super windy, and we were all like, I think we were in like a Starbucks parking lot and we were just sitting there like, is there about to be a tornado right now? So that was an interesting time. But yeah, going out to Buffalo, Setup was the same on the way back with the first time trailering the trailer. We had to learn a lot about trailering, you know, across country. Luckily, the truck handled the trailer fine, but that first route, I was like, let's not go through Denver. I don't want to go through any like super big mountains or anything like that. I just want to try to stay as flat as you possibly can and get back. I remember that we had stress because we didn't know if it could fit in our garage. So we wind up getting like a storage unit, like I want to say like an hour away, or it was like, it's kind of far away from our house. So we actually had to make it to the storage unit first before we were even going to make it home. But overall, it wasn't too bad. It worked out well because we had like a little mattress set up inside of the trailer. And yeah, we were able to stop at the rest stops and sleep for a while. We still drove pretty much straight through as much as we possibly could, but whenever we wanted to like stop and actually like rest, having the trailer was great because we could stop and just go inside the trailer. Didn't have to unhook it or anything. The negative side with that is for most of like these smaller rest stops, it like divides you off to like trucks and cars. We have to go with the trucks. Anything with trailers should go over there. So it did make things a little bit more difficult with that. Remember, I think like we got into like a tricky situation. It was like one gas station. There wasn't a way you could like pull through and get around. It was kind of like a dead end. So we had to kind of like loop around with the trailer and like go up on the grass slightly, but we figured it out. We were able to do it. It was a lot of moving parts, but honestly, having a trailer, especially a smaller one like the hiker trailer, you know, it wasn't bad at all. Especially with the truck, it barely felt it. And yeah, it gave us that much more storage capability. So we even were able to put stuff inside of the trailer itself, load that thing up with just some extra stuff, and then had even more room inside of the truck, which also led us to bringing more and more stuff with us. But you'll see, it wasn't all bad. And then fast forward to the next trip, which was first trip going back and forth both ways. This time we had 3 huskies. Our small little puppy, I know she was really small at that point in time. It was her first trip out there with us. So we had pretty much the same setup. So the only thing that was different with that setup is I don't think we had everything inside the back seat. I think I only had like a little bit of things inside the back seat. I even started stuffing some stuff up like where the seats fold up, like kind of in like the like crack up there, just to have like a little bit of stuff inside of the bed or inside the back seat of the truck, because most stuff was inside the bed or inside the trailer, just to have quick access to certain things like food and stuff like that. The thing I would say I love about the Ram Rebel, the center console was so big, I was able to fit like my camera down there and like snacks, stuff like that. We had our phones. We had like plenty of room in like the front 2 driver seats. So if it's just like you two, the Ram, it's like perfect for that. Full-size trucks are perfect for that. So many cup holders, like we had plenty of space in the front for small things like that. The only negative thing with that is with the 3 dogs, we couldn't really utilize the back area that much, or the back seats. But we did stop at a truck stop and actually slept for, I want to say like 6 hours or so, which was fine. The only negative thing is, once again, we had to go with the big trucks, which we learned that's what we do now. We pretty much go with the big trucks, or trucks with trailers or anything like that. We pretty much go with them at rest stops. As long as you kind of just have that in your mind, like, all right, cool, I'm going with them, it's okay. But as we started to see, I realized that going like the non-stop pace, I started realizing like, I don't necessarily want to do that all the time. I like being able to be like, okay, cool, give ourselves a little bit extra time. We can still go and not have to stop at hotels and spend money on that. But if we're tired and we want to sleep for a little bit, we can sleep, have the trailer, have our stuff with us, and like, that's acceptable pretty much. Getting 3 dogs in that trailer with 2 people, I mean, it's a tight squeeze, but we do it and it is fine. This is kind of how we started perfecting our setup. Now, on the trip back to California, what we actually did was, when we were in Buffalo, we bought a motorcycle. And we weren't sure if it would fit on the trailer, and yeah, luckily enough it did. We had to, you know, finagle it a little bit, but it was able to get on the trailer. So that added extra tongue weight to the trailer, but the truck could handle it. The big thing with that was just making sure at truck stops or gas stations or any type of time, any time that we stopped, I would always get out, check the straps on that to make sure it was, you know, still tied down. And yeah, it was. I mean, once we put it on there, it was pretty much on there. It was like, I might have went overkill with the straps, but I wanted to make sure this thing wasn't going to be moving. That thing didn't move a single inch. It was in there, stayed perfectly like straight up and down. Putting that on the trailer wasn't too bad. It was Honestly, it was, it was okay doing that for the first motorcycle. But overall, once I realized that we could do that, that also started shaping the way that we're doing things now. Having a motorcycle on top of the trailer, because the whole point of getting that trailer was to take our dirt bikes out to the desert and go camping out there. So I wasn't necessarily sure, how a street bike would fit on there. The dirt bike fits perfectly. Street bikes, they're a little bit bigger, a little bit more heavier. But once we realized that we could do it with like a smaller CBF 500, that led us into the next trip, which was our latest one, which is in March 2025. We drove back to Buffalo. Everything was fine, except for, that trip, crazy amounts of weather. We went through the southern route, which actually we've been going pretty much the southern route. We haven't really gone through Denver yet with the trailer, but going through the southern route this last time, it was a crazy snowstorm that went through. I didn't believe it. I didn't think that there would really be snow inside like Arizona, but there was. Actually, the rest stop that we usually stop is like the Arizona like Welcome Center, kind of like off of the, I think it's the 40 or something like that. It was filled with snow. Like literally on the last trip that we came back to California, we stopped there and slept for a couple hours. Going out in the opposite direction this time, it was filled with snow and ice. There was so much snow, like the main highway was closed off for a good section. So it actually routed us down to Phoenix, and then it made us cut up through a no toll route, this little 2-lane highway going up in the hills. And I remember thinking that was like the only time where I was like, all right, I have to be 100% on. I believe we like left late at night and we were still driving through this section like late at night, early morning, and my wife was sleeping. It was just me driving. The dogs, they have no idea what's going on, but it was snowy, poor visibility, towing a trailer, going up and down in elevation. So I was definitely on my A game when it came down to driving and just making sure we can handle the trailer. It wasn't too bad. It didn't have any it wasn't slipping or anything like that, but I was definitely making sure I respected the road, because I was like, yeah, you can't see much. And one bad move, you're going to be going off of a cliff somewhere. Hopefully the guardrail will stop you, but we got a lot of weight. But this is where having the extra confidence comes in handy, of being able to know, at this point in time, we've towed that trailer many times across country and just in other trips and stuff like that. And I do want to mention also, throughout this whole time, I've been taking trips down to we went up to Northern California. I've been going up and back and forth to Vegas, going down even further south to San Diego. So we've been doing trips and stuff like that a lot. And even with the Velociraptor, I did a trip up to Vegas. So yeah, we've been doing trips, quite a bit. These are the extended multi-day trips that are literally across country that I'm mostly talking about. But having the confidence of being yeah, we can tow this trailer, that definitely helped out a lot. I still respected the weight and the responsibility of, if something goes wrong, it's on you. So, just having that extra confidence, that helps out a lot. But then on the trip back from Buffalo back to California, well, I wind up buying another motorcycle, this time a bigger bike, KTM 890, which is the adventure bike on the channel. So if you love adventure biking content, check out the channel, but to use that thing off-roading and do overlanding and things like that. And I want to do more trips just on the motorcycle itself. That was a much bigger motorcycle. Getting that on the trailer was no simple task. But when it was on the trailer, that thing looked cool. That setup broke necks. Our trailer was orange, the motorcycle's orange, we had the white truck. I mean, we were the talk of the town of every Love's gas station we went to. People were like, whoa, that thing looks cool, your setup looks cool. Because they were like, yeah, you got California plates, where are you going, what are you doing, so I literally had to talk to a lot of people, which was cool. But after a time, I was like, yeah, literally almost at every single gas station, people were coming up to us and talking to us. So, there's some pros and there's some cons to that. I was worried that if we stopped at a rest stop, with someone trying to mess with the bike or anything like that, because we did stop at, I think maybe 2 rest stops we stopped at. So as you can tell, over time, we've been really using the trailer more, of being cool. When we're tired, if we're both really tired, it's better for us to just stop, get a couple hours of sleep, and then keep going. It's the whole point of bringing the trailer. Besides for actually bringing extra stuff, because I will say, going back to Buffalo, each time I feel we bring more and more stuff with us, and we bring more and more stuff back home out to California. I don't know how that keeps happening, but yeah, the other benefit of having the trailer is you could put stuff in there as well. But yeah, I will say I was a little bit worried that someone would try to mess with the motorcycle on top of there, but then I was thinking talking like they couldn't even get that thing off with one person. Like it took 3 of us to get that motorcycle on that trailer. One person isn't getting that thing off, even with the ramps and everything like that. But overall, that setup worked great. I do think we're going to change things up a bit for taking motorcycles, only because of putting the bikes on that trailer. It is a bit more stressful, and I actually did damage my motorcycle. The skid plate I broke taking it off. So I think we're going to change things up a bit, which you'll see in a second. But overall, I mean, that was a great setup. Having the truck with the trailer, you could handle the weight like it was nothing. That made things way more comfortable, so we could stop whenever we wanted to stop. Another thing I do want to mention is with this setup, what we learned that we could do is now we have a refrigerator, a portable fridge, a EcoFlow fridge that we keep in the back seat. So actually, I just kind of like had it in the back and shifted it over to one side and had the dogs on the other side. Because with the Ram Rebel, like the back seat is like massive. So even with the fridge taking up one section and we were able to put stuff kind of like around it, it allowed us to have cold food with us, so I can make coffee on the road and keep like my creamer and everything like that cool. And we also had the portable power station, so I can run like the coffee maker and everything like that. That helped out a lot. Having coffee, like good coffee on tap, not having to stop at Starbucks so much was nice. Even though I think we're going to change things up even with that setup and keep the fridge in the truck bed, because of it was nice having it in the back seat, but for the amount of space it took up, I don't think it was worth it, because still at the end of the day, anything that I was going to be getting out of the refrigerator, we probably were going to stop anyway. So like having it either in the trailer or having it in the back of the truck was probably a better bet than having it in the back seat taking up that much room. But pretty much this setup, I would say, was as close as I could get to the perfect winning formula for our situation of being able to go across country very comfortably, being able to take motorcycles with us, and being able to take a trailer with us as well. But we did just upgrade. We got a little bit different system. So let's talk about that. So that brings us to present day. What is the setup that we're going to be doing? So we're still going to be having, I think for sure, having the travel trailer. The hiker trailer is definitely going to stay inside. What's going to stay with the channel. I am absolutely loving this thing. We did think about maybe potentially getting a different trailer, but I really just like this trailer. I love the way this thing is set up. We did do some additions to it. We put the bed frame with a bed in here, so that's nice. And as you can see, we still have the front section which we could put a motorcycle on. So this was the CBF 500 that we put on there. It's a much smaller bike. The only issue was with the KTM 890, it is a much bigger motorcycle. So that thing barely fit on there. So the only other thing that I was thinking possibly we may do down the line is if we swap out this trailer and get a trailer that's more of a toy hauler type of style that we could fit both bikes inside of the trailer. I did think about that possibly, but honestly, I'm really just liking the hiker trailer. It's one of my favorite trailers, I can say. The extreme off-road version, I just really like the way this thing tows behind the truck, and when we're not using it to carry motorcycles, I like just sleeping in this thing. So I don't know if we would necessarily get rid of this, but I think for right now, this guy's gonna stay, because I have another idea on how we could bring motorcycles with us. Because bringing bikes isn't gonna be like the main thing that I'm gonna be doing with this trailer. This is really for if we're going back to like Buffalo or something like that and we wanna bring motorcycles with us. It would be nice to do it, but we don't always do that. So I don't wanna make that decision just purely on that. So now when it comes down to what do I think is the perfect setup for us in our situation? Well, I love the Ram Rebel so much that we just got another one. This time a little bit newer, just because I didn't want to have to worry about putting miles on the other setup. My other setup, it actually had 150,000 miles. I didn't even realize that at the time. So 2019, it was still running strong, but it was starting to have some cooling problems. And I flushed the radiator multiple times. I did a couple things to it, but it was starting to have more and more issues. And for a vehicle that I want to take further and further out, I was starting to think, well, maybe this is time to get something a little bit different, because I do want to take a trip up to Alaska at one point in time, and yeah, I just didn't want to have to worry about that in the back of my mind. Now, the thing about this vehicle is this is a Ram Rebel GT. The thing I like about this truck, it is still set up to tow, not as much as the other Ram Rebel. That one was more set up just particularly for towing. That one was a 2-wheel drive truck. This is a 4-wheel drive truck, but I like this capabilities a little bit more just because we can go further off the beaten path and do not just trips just on the highway, but do trips and do more overlanding and go off-roading and take the trailer with us. So that's the main reason why I really like that trailer in particular, because that trailer can basically go anywhere this truck could go. Whereas something that was more of a toy hauler would have a little bit more difficulties and things like that going as far off the beaten path, just because of the clearance would be a lot lower because it would literally be on the floor. Now, do I think you need all of this to do long travel trips? No. Obviously not. We made it work with other vehicles, other setups and things like that. But the thing I will say I do like about this setup in particular is because of, well, I really just like this interior. I don't know how else to say it. I love this interior. Having the big screen is nice and all, but I mean, I do feel like this is a bit much. Having the phone mount for your phone, you can have another one over here for the passenger. I really just like this setup for long distance travel. And then also having the massive back seats for the dogs, which I think is nice. And then also having the plug outlets so we can set up a refrigerator in here and things like that. But when it comes down to one of the major things I was thinking about doing is if we're going to be doing long distance traveling with bringing the motorcycle. Since we do have the cap on the truck, my thought was if we wanted to bring both motorcycles, we could take the cap back off and put the bikes in the truck bed. That's another possibility. Or put one bike in the truck bed and one bike on the trailer if we needed to do that. How often will we be bringing two motorcycles? Probably not that often. When we do go dirt biking, we do put my wife's bike in the truck bed. It's small enough that it could fit with the cap still on, and I can put my dirt bike on top of the trailer in the front. Those bikes are smaller and just lighter, so it's easier. But I think if we were to bring the street bikes, we would have to take the cap off of the truck in order to get them to fit inside of here, which I don't think necessarily is a terrible idea, but we would lose some space when it comes down to lockable storage because of the truck bed would be open. But we could put stuff, if we put both motorcycles in the truck bed, we could put all the stuff that we would carry with us on the trailer itself or inside of the trailer. So there's multiple different ways that we could do this thing. But in general, no matter what you have, you can make this setup work. We've done it with multiple setups. If you want to go across country inside of a car, you can do it. I mean, hey, I love taking road trips. We've done multiple road trips. I just took my wife's Mustang up to Vegas, even though that wasn't like a super long trip, but taking it on a road trip is still fun. I think the enjoyable thing is taking multiple different vehicles on road trips really gives you a chance to learn the vehicle, spend some time with it, and just get out on the open road and just enjoy it. But with that in mind, I want to know, what road trip vehicles have you guys taken? Let me know in the comment section below. But if you want to see the last road trip video that we did with the 2019 Ram Rebel and the hiker trailer, bringing back the KTM 890 all the way from Buffalo, New York to Southern California, check this video out right here. Subscribe for more. We'll see you guys over there.